Okay, we use the word story a lot, and probably too much. What do we mean by that? Because sometimes story is factual, right? That's what journalists and scientists do. That's how they base their stories. Sometimes it's fanciful. That's what movies are, right? Don't look up. That's what people do in advocacy. You know, stories can be used for persuasion. And so that's what we're going to hear a little bit now, to connect points of view with audiences to persuade. We're going to have this conversation, and then we're going to go to coffee break, and I'll come back and tell you what some of the workshops are going to be across the street. But I'm happy now to invite Professor Joanna Huckster, who's an assistant professor of environmental studies at Eckerd College. She's in Florida. Her interests are really cool and interesting and totally relevant, right? She studies public understanding and communication of environmental issues. In fact, we did something a couple of years ago in Florida about Floridians' association and understanding of what's going on in their state. Florida's kind of an interesting case study these days, isn't it? Anyway, she's going to lead a workshop tomorrow on Cli-Fi, right? How we use climate in sort of, well, she'll explain. But now she's going to discuss persuasive storytelling, and I'd like to invite her up with Gabrielle Gurley, senior editor at the American Prospect, Ashley Walker, social media manager at the Climate Reality Project, Maria Zaharatos, a master's student studying public administration at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, whose story you can see on Planet Forward, and I'm getting out of here, so it's all here.
Thank you, Frank. Please sit. All right, so I'm so honored to be here hosting this panel at Planet Forward and also speaking with all of these incredible change makers. Unfortunately, we are the last thing standing between all these people and their coffee. So we're gonna ask a few questions. So I would love it if you all, and there's a microphone right there you can pass, if you all would introduce yourself and your work and who your target audience is for your work. Oh, you're all oh, good.
I'm Gabrielle Gurley. I am a senior editor at the American Prospect. The American Prospect is a print magazine. We're obviously on the web, but we also publish 6 times a year in print. Our audience is typically left of center, but we bill ourselves as a magazine that presents informed discussion on politics and public policy from a left of center perspective. So we dive into a broad range of issues. I focus on climate crisis. Specifically, I have a great interest in managed retreat. I also cover cities, urban affairs, economic development and infrastructure, elections, and civil rights.
Excellent, thank you. Go ahead, Ashley.
I'm Ashley Walker. I am the social media manager at the Climate Reality Project. We focus on educating, training, and empowering activists or people interested in making a difference in climate. And so across our social media channels, our focus is to educate you while also allowing you to figure out the ways that you can act in your community.
I'm Maria Zaharatos. I'm a current student at the Middlebury Institute doing public administration. And prior to starting my master's, I was working in undergrad, starting a student-led nonprofit. And so my 2 other co-founders can't be here today, but we work on creating accessible curricula and children's books on relevant global issues to inspire kids to think globally and act locally in their communities. And so our first book is on plastic pollution.
Can you hold that up again? Let's all see it. How beautiful. Oh, wow, that looks wonderful.
Yeah, the illustrations are really lovely. Sure. I can show people later as well, but yeah.
What I love about this panel is the diverse types of media that you all are using. How do each of you use persuasive storytelling in your work? And is there a way that you can do that to include diverse voices who are often marginalized in this space?
I have done a story recently on water wars, specifically in the Southeast, in Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. For this particular story, I decided to go down a very straight and narrow path of covering the story based on the science, the history, and the law. I did not want to get into some of the thornier issues. I knew I was not able to go to the region, so I made a conscious choice to kind of stick to kind of the higher level issues because I wasn't going to be able to really talk to people, see what they're up against, that sort of thing. So I focused on those issues, but I was particularly interested in the aspects of interstate cooperation. Here are three, I work for Progressive Magazine. Here are 3 Republican states who have been involved in very contentious water fights for decades. 4 decades. Florida rolled the dice, went to the Supreme Court and said, Georgia's stealing our water, our oysters are dying. Supreme Court said, we're going to call in our science experts, because obviously we're not scientists. Science experts said, justices, Florida's wrong.
That never happens.
Yeah, that never happens. Basically, the justices decided 9-0 that Florida was in the wrong and Georgia was not stealing their water. This is kind of typical of some of the fights that we're going to be seeing going forward. We've heard a lot about the West and what's going on there. That's very high profile. The Southeast is the second dry, actually is the second driest region in the country. So these fights are going to be percolating more intensely over the foreseeable future. Mississippi has sued Tennessee over water issues. And so it's very good to get a perspective on what's going on in between states, even before you get into some of the questions about marginalization. And I would say in this particular fight, the marginalized people are farmers, for example, Georgia farmers, who are trying to figure out this space. I did not talk to any farmers, but I talked to a lot of the water activists and experts who said, it's really not about the rural areas of Georgia or metro Atlanta. It's really an interstate cooperation that needs to happen. And just to show, again, how it's done, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York have a compact on water. And it's a model. Now, there you get into kind of the partisan issues in democratic states. What can they teach us? But this is what Florida, Georgia, and Alabama are going to have to figure out, because it's going to come to a head again, and the Supreme Court's already shown its hand. You folks have to figure it out. We're not going to.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think persuasive, storytelling comes into really thinking about our audiences. So Climate Reality's audience is really vast. We target people from, younger than 18 to over 65. And so it becomes a challenge for us to determine how we're communicating on our channel. So when we're thinking about specific topics, so if we're talking about no fossil fuels, right? So we try to think through what's most important for our audiences to know in order for them to be educated or even take action. I think part of that is also understanding that there are diverse groups that are more impacted, or our frontline communities that are more impacted by the things that are happening because of fossil fuels, and giving room for those voices and not speaking for those voices. So a lot of the things that my team will do is either reach out to individuals who are a part of those communities and amplify their voices, or amplify the type of content that they are speaking about, so that we're not speaking for them, but we're amplifying what's happening in the world, and what's most important to them is obviously most important to us, because we're trying to move us forward in this particular fight. I think also amplifying people in those communities, quotes from them, or connecting with them. We're trying to get into more live communication so people can really see that this is something that does not impact someone who is not similar to you, it really is something that's close to home, and it's important for us to make that difference and to amplify that voice. So that's how we go about trying to be persuasive in our communications.
Bringing back that close to home message. This impacts you and people you know.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
a lot of people actually think that it's separate. Like even before
Polar
I got
bears.
in, polar bears, the waving polar bear. For me, even, I'm newer to the climate fight, if you will. I started at Climate Reality almost 2 years ago. Although I was doing things that were sustainable, I didn't have as much knowledge. And getting more knowledge and then hearing other people's voices and perspectives and the things that they've experienced gave me even more passion to amplify their voices and to create that platform for them to be able to thrive and be able to connect with their audiences.
Thank you, Ashley.
So at FARO, Projects for Global Education, we want the story, the book to help support kids becoming passionate about the story so that then with the curriculum they can learn. And so the book tries to draw on sort of a multicultural competence, and it's a story of a young girl. It's a fictional story, but a story of a young girl in Ecuador, and she gets a chance to explore how plastic pollution is affecting the Galapagos. And so it helps sort of share a different perspective. And so we partnered with some cultural consultants and connections that we had in Ecuador, are trying to build a relationship with a partner school there so that we can bridge that community as well as the community of local educators who we're trying to pilot our curriculum with in San Antonio in Texas, which is where the organization is based. So yeah, we try to create an engaging story, and from there kids can learn about what's happening globally, and with the curriculum, which is project-based, apply that exploration in their communities and learn from a scientific point of view, like, oh wow, this is what's happening in my river, in my community, and then learn to come together in community and make a change on those issues.
Fantastic. And if somebody, had a small child and wanted a book like that, where might one get it and those other materials that you're speaking about?
Yeah, so our book is on Amazon. You can also find it on our website. I think it's faroprojectsforglobaleducation.org, but please just come see me and I'll direct you. And yeah, we're working on getting the curriculum piloted in some schools, but we can also have it for like home use because it is just a project-based curriculum that you can space out.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, so we only have a couple minutes left, so what I'd love to do is have you all give us, for the students and the audience here, a key takeaway, a parting piece of advice for communicating about climate and the environment, or about moving forward with this kind of work, how to get involved in this kind of work. What would your piece of advice be?
Persevere. Perseverance in telling stories that people do not want to hear is very, very important. There are going to be people who tell you that you're not qualified to do it, or we don't want to hear it. You just need to persevere and search for the opening to convey the sentiment that you are trying to share. There's always an opening, but it takes time and effort and going deep into yourself to find the way to find that space and to get through it and to make the connection that allows you to spread your message.
Wonderful. We all need a little more perseverance. Thank you.
I think understanding that your perspective matters, and so there are a lot of ways that people communicate across social media or in the digital space, and understanding that there's no formula for the way that you can communicate in those spaces. So know what you're passionate about, be authentic to yourself, and then really understand the type of people that you're trying to connect with. You might not be trying to connect with climate deniers, but other individuals who are interested in this fight, and they are not necessarily passionate yet, but they're willing and open to your messages. So really figure out who your audience is and be very true to yourself.
I would say that if you're designing a story, an experience, or like any sort of program that's trying to engage people with the environment, we focused on inviting people to learn more, because I think there's the power of one story, but you want to be able to make them passionate about looking into other stories and getting their hands dirty themselves, and really diving into that issue. So trying to sort of tell the story, but even leave parts out, like allude to some things, like where can you learn more about this, or what is something that can really draw someone in and get them to open this whole new world. So, yeah.
Gabrielle, Ashley, Maria, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. A couple of takeaways here that I'd like to add. You are the most powerful people in human history. You are the most powerful generation in human history. With your social media, with your one device, you reach more people than anyone has ever been able to reach before. Look at the Black Lives Matter movement. Look at the March for Our Lives movement. Look at the climate change activism movement. The stories you tell, whether it's with a photo that you post on Instagram or any other social media, I'm not going to name them because some we don't talk about so much anymore, or whether you're doing an actual story for Planet Forward or for Project Drawdown, you've got the power to do that. And some of these stories are stories like journalists or advocates, and some of these are stories, it's just the way you communicate. What was Ed talking about to your family? Hey, Uncle Al, look what I did last weekend, right? Look how dry the backyard is. Everything you do, every exchange, think of it as a story.